UNICEF says a vehicle waiting to enter northern Gaza was hit by live ammunition. 3 bullets hitting the car, which they say was clearly marked with the UN logo. Now, this again raises concerns of Israeli military conduct following that deadly aid worker attack on the World Central Kitchen workers just last week. Now, UNICEF is saying they've raised the incident with Israeli authorities, adding that humanitarians continue to face risks in their work to reach people in need.
So yes, more humanitarian aid vehicles being fired on by the IDF. Now, in this case, thankfully, the UNICEF workers did survive, and they were fired at with small arms, not bombed. But again, it was vehicles that were very clearly marked. And let's pause for a moment just to acknowledge the fact that it is amazing that there are people brave enough to still man those vehicles, to go into those areas knowing that you could be bombed, you could be fired at, despite the fact that you've done everything you're supposed to do in this circumstance. But while they survived, very often the aid they're trying to transport into Gaza does not, because the policies, the procedures for checking and approving of that aid seems punitive and random, arbitrary in practice. And to really make that clear, let's show you some of the aid items that have been rejected during these searches. So remember, it's supposed to help people in need in a war zone. So things like crutches and generators for hospitals and maternity kits and thread and medical scissors in children's aid kits, basic things that you might need for a variety of different procedures. But that's not all. Clamps and scissors and scalpels and surgical tools and ventilators and wheelchairs, obviously a very dangerous weapon, syringes and x-ray machines. So again, some of the most basic stuff you would need to be able to operate like a field hospital or try to get one of the many hospitals that have been bombed back up and running, those have been rejected. And while those are the more critical ones, it gets almost silly in practice sometimes what can be rejected and for what reason. So as perhaps one of the most extreme examples, one US official who visited the Rafah crossing point last month described meeting with aid workers who were deeply frustrated by the seeming arbitrariness of the rejected items. They included a pallet of chocolate croissants, which was apparently blocked because the Israelis deemed them luxury foods inappropriate for a war zone. Bear in mind, there are many people actively starving right now. They could have used those croissants to maintain their life, not to feel luxurious. It's food, it's calories, that's what it is. What does it matter if it's fancy? It's not a weapon, it's not gonna hurt anyone, and it's desperately needed. But anyway, look, we're criticizing this, the aid organizations are criticizing it, journalists who have seen this in practice are as well, but you also do have some politicians weighing in, including Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen, who said that the review process is totally arbitrary. When you're turning back maternity kits and water purification tablets, that is a deliberate effort not to allow desperately needed goods into Gaza. There is no rational justification. But perhaps even worse than the rejecting of the individual items, the clamps, the wheelchair, whatever, it's the consequences when that happens. Because when an item is rejected, it is not the only thing that is not allowed to go in. Entire trucks are turned back. If you have those scissors in a children's aid kit, then that truck does not make it in. I don't know what other food might have been with the luxury food item of chocolate croissants, but unfortunately neither do those in Gaza because they didn't get access to it because it was rejected. And almost every step along the way, it seems like the point of all of this is to stop things that are needed from getting in, or else at this late date, the policies would have already long been changed. But unfortunately, that is the situation on the ground right now. And we have more, but what do you make of this?
Yeah, so guys, first of all, you need context in all these stories because Israel will then counter with, oh no, I don't know what you're talking about. This is super normal and oh God, we're sending these things in so quickly, you'd never believe it. Correct, we would never believe it. So and there's a reason why we wouldn't believe it, because Israel said it, of course not. Israel said many things that are correct in the past, before this conflict, etc. As with all governments, sometimes they tell the truth and oftentimes they lie. So in this case, how do we know who's telling the truth? Well, as John pointed out, literally every aid organization, every reporter on the scene is saying, not only is Israel wrong in their claims about, oh, they're letting things through perfectly fine, but the aid organizations say this is the worst they have ever seen any government react in terms of bringing in humanitarian aid. The worst out of all the things that they have seen. So that gives you some degree of context. Israel says, oh, we're sending it in perfectly fine. it's 20% of the traffic of this type of material that was coming in before the conflict. So now, if you think 20%, well, I get it, there's a conflict, etc. But remember, some of the stuff that they're bringing in is food. Now, most of the food, water, and blankets get to go through, and so thanks God for that, right? But even those are slowed down by the giant lines of trucks. So if you're only getting 20% of the food you used to get, only 20% of the medical equipment in a best case scenario that you're getting, and for the medical equipment, it ain't anywhere near 20%. Well, you actually needed that food and the medical equipment for in normal times. You need them even more now, and they're getting it in a trickle. Then the next question. So the question of whether Israel's telling the truth or not on this is settled. Unless you think you're one of those people, and there are these people who say, no, I will take Israel's word over every aid organization in the world and every reporter in the world. If you're in that group, I can't help you anyway. You're never gonna listen to facts or reason. So then now we move on to why are they doing it? And that one is a little bit more speculative, right? One, Israel could say, no, I am really concerned. Those syringes, if you collect enough of them, could be turned into a tiny little bomb, and then they could, and then, whoa, we can't have that. So I'm super concerned. And the maternity kits, if you put all of them together, it might help moms. And so, look, even if you take like the crutches and the children's scissors, and you're in that camp of giving Israel every benefit of the doubt, well, what if Hamas comes at him with that scissors and they cut them? Guys, look at this. Who's David and who's Goliath? Because Israel keeps pretending that they're tiny little David in this very tough neighborhood over Goliaths, and they're gonna get. Israel has nukes, let alone the fact that they just literally obliterated 50% of the buildings in Gaza, and 85% of the citizens of Gaza are displaced. And you're worried about children's scissors or maybe syringes that could be turned into tubes that could be turned into pea shooters. That is not a legitimate concern at all. But then when you go further down the list, I don't like croissants. You know what, they said it's a luxury food item. We're now banning anything we consider a luxury food. Okay, this is gonna go towards intent. Sleeping bags with zippers, that's banned. What are they gonna do? Collect all the zippers from the sleeping bags and then do something with it? No, look, okay, I guess, again, that tiny little group of zealots that defend Israel will say, of course, zippers kill people, okay? And we've got to make sure we stop it in those maternity kits, then those women will be able to deliver their babies perfectly fine instead of having them die. Oh, I see. So listen, guys, my guess as to why they're doing this, and the guess of many people, is that it's not an accident that they're hitting aid convoys. It's not an accident. They just hit journalists again. One of the journalists had their leg blown off. And it's not an accident that they've slowed aid tremendously, and worse than any conflict these aid organizations have seen. They're trying to put, in their minds, maximum pressure on the Palestinians. And maximum pressure includes the starvation of over 1 million people. So again, if you're one of the zealots, you'll say, yeah, of course, it's their fault and it's Hamas's fault for hiding behind their starving babies. Like, they sometimes lose the thread on the different excuses that they use, right? So, but for the rest of us that live in the sane world, this is atrocious. And not only is it literally killing Palestinians as we speak, but it is absolutely destroying the reputation of Israel. If you're in a zealot, you're like, oh no, everybody already hated Israel because they're all anti-Semites. 200% of the world are anti-Semites, and they hated us from the beginning. Well, actually, some portion of the world are anti-Semites, and they probably did hate you from the beginning. Is it 100%? Not anywhere near that. Not anywhere near that. Now the whole world despises Israel because of anti-Semitism? No, because we see the dead babies, and you won't let sleeping bags and maternity kits in. That's not hard to understand. And you're telling me you hit UNICEF again and you killed you hit a journalist again, including a CNN journalist, and oops, that's their 20,000th mistake in a row. Yeah, I'm in the crowd that says, I don't think it's a mistake at all. I think they're trying to drive the aid organizations out. They're trying to limit the aid as much as humanly possible so they can inflict maximum damage on the Palestinian civilians. Now, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt and thinking maybe they think in their twisted, immoral mind, that's gonna create pressure on the Palestinians to somehow do something against Hamas. But the more likely explanation is it's collective punishment. And what we're seeing is clearly a genocide. Nina.
Yep, that's it, Jink. I mean, you and John hit all the nails on the head. It is collective punishment. They are attempting to, and being very successful, might I add, in crushing the spirits of the Palestinians who are still alive and living through famine. And a point that John made, I mean, there is no way to live in luxury in a war zone. Those two things just don't go together. You know, Sesame Street, they would say one of these things just don't belong. There is no way to live luxuriously in a war zone. And Israel continues to make excuse after excuse after excuse. They're doing this accidentally on purpose. And that is why our country, the United States of America, has got to stop playing games. I mean, Jink, you talked about zippers and maternity kits. Meanwhile, Israel enjoys billions of dollars from the United States taxpayers. Hamas has nothing on that level, and the everyday Palestinians have nothing on that level. And let's say, for example, even if the Palestinian people did want to rise up against Hamas, how possibly would they do that with over 60% of their infrastructure blown up to smithereens and with millions of people, over 1 million people living in famine right now as we speak? They can barely make it day by day. And yes, all the agencies, I mean, Jink, your point is right. Either Israel is lying or all these agencies and got in the back room together and said, we're gonna try to just drum up these lies against Israel. This is one of the two. There is no middle ground here. This is collective punishment. This is genocide by accident on purpose.
Yeah, I don't know about the rest of you, but obviously, for months and months now, every once in a while we'll get those updates on how many people have died. And every single time it's like a punch in the gut. Because there's this sense of inevitability. Like we were talking about how utterly unacceptable it was at 2,000 dead, 5,000 dead, 10,000 dead. Right. And we know that 20 is coming. We know that 30 is coming. And oh God, now we're there. And something could have been done. Not a single one of those deaths needed to happen. And now I'm just wondering, are we gonna get accurate numbers on starvation, deaths from disease?
That's right. And John, another point I wanted to make is that we have 30,000+ that we know of. Mm-hmm. All three of us know, and our viewers know, that number is much higher. It's only what they can calculate. It's much higher than what they can calculate. You better bet that it is. And so something has to give. And we're 6 months in too. Let us remind our viewers of that. 6 months in. How many more people have to die? How many more people have to endure the gut-wrenching feeling of starvation? How many more parents and grandparents have to bury their children and their grandchildren? Just how many more? I mean, Jink and John, I just want somebody to give us a number.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.